Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I want to talk about an interesting subject. I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and I want to talk about what the television show, the new Paramount Plus show, The Agency with Michael Fassbender and Harriet Sampson Harris, um, and Jeffrey Wright. He's in there, but we're not going to talk about him today. He's fantastic. That's the only reason I mentioned him. This show is brilliant. It is every Dungeon Master content for every Dungeon Master when they reach 18 plus. Pretty sure, like, I don't think they rate streaming shows, but this would be rated R. All right, so I want to talk about what the agency says about identity stacking and how we as Dragon Masters, let me define Dragon Master. So a modern Dungeons and Dragons player that is a Dragon Master. I think it's really it's incredibly dismissive and rude and insulting to call a Dungeons and Dragons player a player. It's wrong on 15 levels. The correct term is Dragon Master, okay? And why did I throw in that modern part? Because if you're playing OSR, Dungeons and Dragons, you don't matter. Everybody can ignore you. You're just doing a nostalgia play. Nothing you do matters. No one should look at you for anything or any solutions or think in any way that your game has any value. Right? Like you play Dungeons and Dragons, the current edition, always. If you don't, your game doesn't matter, in my humble opinion. Okay, all right, and why does any of this matter? Because we don't play Dungeons and Dragons. We do Dungeons and Dragons for purpose. So a Dragon Master is a Dungeons and Dragons player who's playing for purpose, right? Who's participating, not playing, participating in Dungeons and Dragons and running a player character for purpose. Okay, all right. So let's see what the agent. So first of all, the Dragon Master. Okay, in Dungeons and Dragons is doing identity stacking. This isn't happening anywhere else in the world, right? So basically, what happens when a Dragon Master identity stacks? Well, they end up with like 30 identities, and the person they are is a free form amalgamation of 30 adventurers, of 30 people who have seen the sunrise on 30 worlds. And there's nothing like this in the world. This has never existed in the world before. Nowhere, right? Gary Gygax created a platform to create a hyperhuman, a human being whose every word is more valuable than other human beings. Period. Just because they've seen things, right? Like they're not just limited to one identity. They're identity stacked. They are manifold sentient. Okay, all right. You following this? All right. Now the problem is, man, you should see how people respond to this concept when I talk about it. People get very upset, right? They're like, "Oh, Scott, I'm just here to cut some goblins in half." Scott, I can assure you, no one is growing or learning or transform. No one is improving, growing, or transforming in my game. I can assure you, nothing of value is happening in my game. It's just fun. People are swilling some beer, eating some pretzels, and nothing's happening. You don't have to convince me. I understand that, right? I understand that you're doing nothing with your game, right? And that all you have is game. What I'm telling you is that what Gary Gygax created on February 7, 1974 had nothing to do with games. It had to do with creating hyperhumans who, when they talk, their words are going to echo for a millennia, because what they're saying is so profound, because they understand this world, because they've lived on 30 worlds. You understand that? Okay? All right. Now, and so when I say that, what do people say? They say, Scott, you're crazy. Scott, you're delusional, right? And Scott, you need to get professional help. You can find it for years. Like, people, it just upsets people, right? And they're like, hey, your opinion is different from mine, and the way for me to invalidate your words is to say you're crazy, right? Now, why are we talking about the agency? Well, listen to this, okay? So the agency is about a show about secret agents, right? Like secret agents, right? People who spy on other nations and take identities for weeks, months, or years. They identity stack exactly the way a Dragon Master identity stacks. Listen to how Michael Fassbender's character describes what he does to a psychologist he has been forced to attend, right, for specific sessions. Now, the psychologist is very much the villain in the show, and she is played expertly by Harriet Sampson Harris. She's phenomenal, and you have seen her in like 6 things in your lifetime. She's all over. She's been in a million shows. She works like crazy, right? And so but she does an extremely good job in this. So she plays this incredibly evil. She just plays a psychologist. She plays a psychologist. Okay, all right. So she says, hey, I need, and he's being very dismissive, and he's like, I don't really want to do this. And she's like, listen, this ain't my first rodeo. I've had lots of you tough guys in here who don't want to do psychology, right? And so there's two types of agents, blah, 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 right? And I don't need to tell you what she says about two types of agents, right? And the reason why is none of her words matter. She's the villain of the show, okay? This gets really interesting, right? So Michael Fassbender, as a secret agent, says back to her, he says, listen, there's only one type of secret agent. There's only one type. Insane. Right? Okay. And by the way, I didn't add that one in. People say you're crazy, you're insane, you're delusional, you need professional help. I've gotten every one of those things 20 times minimum. Maybe some of them maybe 50 times, right, over the years, right? All right, and it's this form, and it's cruel invalidation, right? They're like, hey, your opinion's different than mine. You don't have the right to say it. They need to put you in a room with a straitjacket, right? You don't get to talk anymore. That's what it is. Anytime somebody says those words to you, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to say, I don't think you get the right to talk, right? Because your opinion's different than mine. It's outrageously dangerous. Outrageously dangerous. Okay. All right, let's get all the way there. So what does he say? He says, there's only one type of agent, insane. And he says, and I want to assure you that the person you are looking at is, was, and always will be certifiably, identifiably, purely, deeply, 100% nuts. Not too nuts, not come here and shoot everybody up nuts, just nuts enough to do what we have to do. And I would like, that's it. That's all she wrote. It's the best description of a Dragon Master that's ever occurred, right? When we invest ourselves in our player characters and say, this player character is now a new identity for me, and I will invest myself in it. I will pour myself into this identity, and I will take parts of this identity and this character I made and make it permanently a part of me. I'm going to take their courage, and now it's my courage, right? People are like, oh, you can't take a piece of paper, right? And that's what they call it. We call it narrative power, right? We call it auxiliary experience, right? We call it a second set of emotions, sensations, memories, thought, right? We call it manifold sentience. They call it a piece of paper, right? And basically, if you do what I'm saying to do with Dungeons and Dragons, within minutes, people will say you're nuts. The people who love you, the people you tell about it, the people who witness it, everybody outside of that table will say you're nuts. You're 100% certifiably nuts. And I'm here. I got the receipts. You can see it. Like, I'm not telling you this. It's sitting here in the comments. You'll see it 55 places, right? And it's harsh, right? But I also really feel like the writers of the agency really dug into what does it mean to identity stack and saw the truth and literally listed the cost and said, this is what it's going to take. This is what actually happens when you go down this road and do this thing. And it's powerful. It's incredibly powerful. I was blown away by it. And I wanted to warn you, hey, exit through, if you think what I'm saying is strange, exit through the gift shop on the left, right? This ain't for hacks, right? This is, you can slough off and go watch the Dungeon Dudes if you want somebody to tell you what, Ranger class is best, Ranger subclass is best. You're not going to find that here. We are participating in Dungeons and Dragons for purpose. And if you get into this, if you keep doing what I do and you keep walking down this road with me, people will say you are 100% certifiably nuts, right? And I think the important part for us to remember is we're not, right? So Michael Fassbender is like, you just don't understand what I'm doing. You don't understand what I'm doing. And so to you, it's terrifying, and you need to put a label of nuts on it, right? And so I think that's really fascinating. And actually, in the show, he beats her to it. Right? He's like, she's at the beginning. She's like, "You're here to help me," and he's like, "You're not here to help me." Right? And so he beats her to calling himself. He calls himself certifiably nuts. Right? Because he's beating her to it. He knows it's coming. Right? Because he's been brave enough to identity stack, and people abhor it. Abhor it. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion. Absolutely nothing more, absolutely nothing less. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider like subscribing and have a fetch millennium.